Welcome to Command Control Power, Apple Tech Support and Business Talk, the longest-running Apple consulting podcast. For over a decade, we've released weekly episodes featuring real-world stories from the front lines of tech support, in-depth discussions about managing clients and businesses, and conversations with fellow consultants and industry partners. What you're about to hear is a best-of episode originally broadcast on March 9th, 2021. A classic installment from our archives. To hear our latest regularly recorded episodes, you'll need to subscribe to our Patreon-exclusive podcast feed. Designed specifically for Apple IT professionals, this private feed dives deeper into the challenges of running your consultancy, supporting your clients, managing staff, and maintaining large device fleets. For a modest monthly contribution, you'll gain access to a rich library of bonus content, exclusive interviews, and insights you won't find anywhere else. To subscribe, simply visit commandcontrolpower.com and click support. And now, on to the show.
So, Sam, you might have, I don't know if you're navigating some of these phone trees with your recent phone situation, but going back to my annoyance with dealing with AT&T and Verizon, have you been on one of these phone trees lately? I mean, they're getting kind of crazy. Verizon's phone tree, it seems like all roads lead to automated support. So you can opt in, you're listening, you're waiting for an agent. 2 minutes in, they keep repeating, we sent you a link. Go ahead and click that link, and then you'll get connected to a live agent, PS, by text message, not on the phone. Listening to hold music, they cut back in. As a reminder, your tech coach is waiting online. Then it cuts in, and we can call you back within 1 to 2 minutes from now. Why are you telling me that you're going to call me back within 1 to 2 minutes? I'll wait 2 minutes. That's great. And then they say, press 1 to arrange a callback and press 2 for more options. So those are your only options. So I'm just waiting. I'm just going to wait. They're going to answer within 2 minutes. I wait. And then it's like, we didn't get a response. Oh, if we don't get a response. No. So then I press, you have to choose. So I don't want option 1, call back, right? So I press option 2. So then another option on that menu is continue to hold. You have to kind of drill down to get to the point where you can just wait. You just keep waiting. They don't just let you wait anymore.
Right. You have to keep on priming the pump to stay
right.
To stay on hold.
Exactly.
Yep, I've been there.
It's ridiculous.
Oh, it's terrible. I finally get somebody, and then I went through the whole thing where they're trying to sell me this Verizon Home Protect, whatever. I start to get fire coming out of my ears. I'm just like, you work for me. I called you. I have a need. I'm hiring you to help me with this. You're trying to sell me something totally unrelated right now. It just bothers me because I feel like a lot of people that are not savvy get these sales pitches. They're selling snake oil to Nana. I can't stand it. I get upset about it. So, and anyway, it's just it's like anything but phone. It's like you can get support online, by chat, by text message, and they don't want you on the phone. And if they get you, they want to sell you stuff,
That seems the way of the industry. I was doing a remote support with a client, and she needed to upgrade to QuickBooks, the latest version, 2021. And while we're waiting for the link for the guy to provide a payment voucher so we could get the digital download, he's trying to hustle the client other services. How do you do your payroll? What do you mean, how do we do our payroll?
None of your damn business.
Yeah. Just focus on what you're supposed to be doing right now and quit trying to upsell me.
Yeah. It happens everywhere, too. I mean, I was even at the bank the other day making a deposit, and they're trying to sell me on a refinance for my home, while you're standing there. It's just like, leave me alone. Just give me my receipt so I can go.
Everything is attached to some other, side hustle, business model. It's very frustrating. I think we're reaching a point where it's all going to just become a total mess you can't even navigate. I mean, it's already practically there. And some of it is actual scams, we've talked about on the show in the past. And I think, Jerry, you sent one to us at one point, that guy Jim Browning we talked about on the show. That guy's a genius. I mean, he reverse scams the scammers. And I just heard this, it was on the podcast, The Daily. I don't know if you guys listen to any podcasts, let alone this one. It's from the New York Times, where they talked about the work of Jim Browning, trying to act as some kind of slight counter pressure to these scammers that are scamming Nana all day long. He's trying to disincentivize them from doing that and do the right thing. And they talked about that whole thing, and they actually went and met some of these people who are scammers and stuff. If it's that way now, I feel like it's only getting worse, and it's almost like hard to distinguish the scam calls from the scams that are coming from inside the legitimate vendor call centers. Like this Verizon Tech Coach stuff and Home Protect. I'm like, this is totally irrelevant to me. I have a phone with you. It basically sounds like a scam. I just think it's getting really hard for anybody to navigate this. My way of dealing with this lately, like when I get one of these calls, I'll answer sometimes because I don't know if it's a legitimate call or not. They're trying to sell me on car insurance. One of them recently was Norton trying to offer me a refund or something. I'm like, I don't use your service. I press 0. I try to get somebody live on the phone to tell them I'm annoyed with them or whatever. I press 0, I get somebody on the phone and they're saying, sir, please give me your information. We want to help you get a refund for this product. And I said, this is a scam. And they said, it's not a scam, something. Just tell me, do you even know my name? You're calling me, trying to help me supposedly, right, with my account. Do you even have any information about me? They didn't. What I do is I say to them, I hope you find honest work. That's what I say. And then they say to me like something about, this is honest work, sir. This is honest work, and I'm like, yeah, you're telling me that I have this service and I really don't. And you don't have any information about me. This is a total scam. So I hope you find honest work. So I doubt that that's going to work. Something to try to make some kind of difference, I guess.
But the warranty on your car is expiring, Joe.
Oh man, you beat me to it.
I got one better here in the state of Connecticut. There was this company, and anytime I get like corporate filing or anything from the state of Connecticut, you got to give them $20, $75, whatever it is. I usually get on those because if I don't get on them right away, I'm just going to forget about them. So I'll usually log into the state of Connecticut and do the corporate filing. About, I'd say 45 days ago, 60 days ago, there was a company that was almost masquerading like they were the state of Connecticut, basically saying, your filing is due, and it all looked legit. You were supposed to file your annual report. Instead of being charged the normal price, they were adding in their filing fee. So they were acting as like a third-party filing service, but at the same time, they were guising it as if, in fact, they were the state of Connecticut. Did you get this, Sam or Joe? Did you see
you're
this?
starting to get me a little worried because I did get what I thought was legitimate messages about filing.
Yeah, most recently those emails I've hit, but this happened about 45 to 60 days ago. And for some reason, I didn't send it out. I didn't send the paperwork out because they wanted you to mail it to this address that, it almost sounds like, how did I get scammed? For some reason, the snail mail sat on my desk and I didn't send it out. And within a day, my tax attorneys sent out an email to all their clients saying, hey, if you get this thing to file, it's not really from the state, it's from this filing service, and they're doing like a $55 or a $75 markup on top of your normal filing fee to file this on your behalf. I was just fuming because I was inches away from mailing that piece of snail mail. So I was calling them 2 days straight, on and off. I would call them, and every time they would pick up, I'd go like, shame on you guys. We're in the middle of a pandemic, and you're trying to scam people? They knew my voice by about the 7th or 8th time. Sir, we're not scamming people. We're a filing service. Shame on you. This is what reminded me of it, Joe, when you said, I hope you get gainful employment somewhere else, where you can help people. But can you believe that in these really hard times, there's companies out there and they're just vile.
Yeah, that's terrible. I'm glad you were doing that, Jerry. I mean, like, just both of you guys were actually hitting them a little bit. The human inside one of those people was feeling something. You have to believe that, right?
I hope so. Yeah.
But a lot of these calls that you get, they're offshore. There's nothing wrong with outsourcing your tech service. I know that for many years now, Adobe has outsourced a lot of their technical support to the Philippines, and they do a fantastic job. So it's not, I hear somebody with an unrecognizable, air quotes, American accent voice, and all of a sudden I just assume I'm being scammed. But the problem is that they're so far removed from the parent company that even if you voiced your discontent to these people who are in the front lines trying to run that scam by you, it doesn't resonate.
I don't even mean to like put it on the individual agent, when I say I hope you find honest work. I mean, I truly do hope that someone in that role would find honest work. And I don't necessarily blame them for ending up in a job like that. Big picture, the fact that these jobs exist is really a side effect of externalizing costs that need to be, addressed head on. Like the discrepancy between a living wage in one place versus somewhere else, and the discrepancy between, even within our own country, let alone like between our country and other countries, the discrepancy between like quality of life and things like that and opportunity is just something that we need to deal with like societally on a huge scale, not some guy who's like scamming Nana. I mean, there's a really bad set of like incentives set up that like put a person like that in that position. It's not like his fault or her fault. It's a societal problem, really. But I just keep wondering, it's like people that put all this effort into doing evil, like why don't they just put the same effort into doing good? It just seems like, I guess. I mean, is it that much harder to earn a living doing good than to do evil? I mean, I guess. I don't know.
This was a real weird one. A client reached out to me. They had a 2013 iMac that was non-responsive. It's one of those deals where we're all in agreement that anything older than 2012, if it's an iMac and it needs a hard drive, we probably won't do it. But this was certainly made the cut, gave them the whole hard drive spiel. And I'm like, I don't know if I can get your data. The best thing for me to do would be to take this iMac in and see what we can do with it. They couldn't even get the hard drive to boot. Look, you may just lose all your data. They don't have a backup, blah, blah, blah. Right. So I install a new hard drive and I update it to Catalina, right? Created a temporary admin account like we've discussed on this show many, many times. It was on 10.15.7. And then I connected the original internal rotational drive and ran Migration Assistant, intending to bring in the client data. It ran for hours and hours and hours, but Migration Assistant finished, right? So we hit the restart button. All of a sudden, I'm in one of these crazy rebooting loops. Now, this is, something that I've done many, many times. You put in solid state drive in the iMac, you put on Catalina, you run Migration Assistant. I've never been in a rebooting loop, right? Couldn't fix it. Couldn't figure out how to resolve it. Tried to start up in safe mode, blah, blah, blah. Swung the dead cat. Nothing worked. I reinstalled the OS from Internet Recovery, and that seemed to resolve the rebooting loop, which I thought was really strange because the source that I used to install Catalina, I know was a viable, up-to-date installer USB key that I made myself. It looked like most of the client data was there, so I was like thrilled. Home run for the client, home run for me. You come out like a hero. So it looked like I was good to go, except that I had this weirdness where I was unable to install some programs or updates. So I went to the App Store and some programs wouldn't update. And that's weird. It said, unable to update. And it failed silently. It just wouldn't update. And then I noticed in Chrome, in the update window, you know how if you open up About Chrome, it'll automatically go into looking for the latest version, right? In that Chrome update window, it said, error message, unable to write to temp directory. And I'm
snap.
like, no, it didn't say that. Really weird, right? Unable to write to temp directory. Going through the regular protocol that we do to triage a machine and bring in the data, open it up in recovery, go to terminal, disable CSR util, and then from the command line, I removed the private temp directory. I made a brand new one, and then I did a chmod 1777 to the private temp directory, rebooted, and then I was able to update. Isn't that the weirdest thing? And I looked all over the internet for like all these little problems that I was having along the way, but this unable to write to the temp directory, and again, I got the key from Google Chrome. Otherwise, I was getting no error messages for the Apple apps. It just was failing to update silently.
Man, that's really interesting that Chrome gives you a usable error message because, as I've joked in the past, the snap thing is like kind of a silly little colloquial, phrasing of they're trying to tell you actually like the page won't load, but they say snap, and it's like Nana doesn't know what snap. Like you might as well use like an English phrase. Anyway, it's so Apple like not to tell you what the problem is, and it's very Google like to actually use an error message, like hey, this is the error we're getting, you deal with it. We can't write to temp, like that's very useful actually. But
sure.
Apple kind of like masks that stuff to hide any like unpleasantness from the user. Just nothing works, but they just don't know why. But that's supposed to be more pleasant than like knowing what the error message is.
I did the Sam Valencia fist pump in the air because I felt like a computer was almost unusable, giving it back to the client where certain programs wouldn't update. And it was only certain programs that had this methodology of writing to a temp directory before it actually updated itself. Problem was solved. I haven't heard a peep out of the client. This was several months back, but I'm glad I got an opportunity to share the story just in case anybody runs across something crazy like this.
Yeah, nice one, man.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Let me ask you a question. Did you encounter any period of time when you were troubleshooting when you were thinking, I could probably just give it back as is and they won't really know?
Right.
No, that usually comes back to bite me in spades.
Yeah.
It really does.
I know. I'm half kidding. But yeah, I know. But the reason why I mentioned it, though, is because there are times when you're, butting your head against the wall for hours and it actually passes through your head at some point. Like, I'm just going to give it back. I can't take it anymore.
Yeah, give it back to Junior. He'll never know.
Right. What do you want? It's a 2013 Mac. You want to update it. I mean, you're lucky it even runs right now. Yeah, I mean, because, honestly, like that model era, I think that one's now in that same category. Like you said, pre-2012. I mean, at this point, like 2013 won't run Big Sur, which to me is kind of an indicator, what Apple thinks of it. So there may be some real reasons to just officially not recommend hardware upgrades for those kinds of machines. Of course, there's still cases where that's cheaper, maybe, and a client would prefer to spend a few $100, maybe half the price of a new machine, and just get another working computer for another year or two.
Right, but you get the call. It's a cold call, or somebody that that you don't know, obviously, right? So do you want to get the work? So I figure, go for the installation, the hard drive, little bit of markup on that, and get the win, rather than tell them like, screw it, just go out and buy a new machine, don't bother me.
Well, yeah, because they just might not do anything.
Isn't that your default answer, though?
That's true.
Hey, we're a boutique shop, Sam. We're a boutique shop. We don't take everything that comes in the door like some people.
I'm trying to get better at saying no, just in case that was directed at me. But well, so speaking of Migration Assistant, though, I wanted to give 2 tips on migrations. First of all, I wanted to sing the praises of Adigy. It's a tool we use very regularly, well integrated into our everyday sort of workflows. I wanted to specifically call out a relatively new feature. I think it came out months ago. It hasn't been around that long, but I haven't used it very much until very recently. It's Adigy Live Desktop. When this came out, I thought, that's cool that it works, but I just wasn't sure how useful it would be. I thought, I've already got ways to get into computers. I've already got my preferred, team viewer. And I thought, well, I don't necessarily need another tool. I'm glad to know it's there in case I need it. I thought, well, you still got to jump through the hoops from the system. There's nothing they can really do about that to avoid having to turn on, in this case, Apple Remote Desktop and things like that. I tried it out, and it's actually great. It's really, really nice. It's very fast. You click the Live Desktop link in Adigy. It opens up screen sharing automatically. You connect to the machine, and you use the local user's username and password, or a user that has screen sharing access or Apple Remote Desktop access on that machine. Why is that good? Well, the reason that this is way better than other solutions is that it actually works during Migration Assistant. So this is one of my Migration Assistant tips. If you're doing a remote migration, which obviously is a lot more common these days, you can monitor it, you can oversee it, you can basically do the whole thing remotely if you use Adigy Live Desktop. So our sort of workflow on this is, set up the new machine. As I've mentioned, probably relatively recently, we have a protocol for this where we set up a temp user, we do all the updates. We've just found that's always a good idea. And then we use Migration Assistant from the utilities folder. So we're already kind of, able to connect to the actual new computer as kind of a temporary setup. So the only addition here is you just install Adigy on it while you've got access to it. You send the user a link, or you just get connected remotely using some other tool like TeamViewer, and then you just install Adigy. Then you can connect using Adigy Live Desktop, and then you can just run the whole migration from there. So it's incredibly useful to be able to actually monitor the status of migration in progress, just like we could if we had a VPN connected to their network and we were using ARD to connect during the migration. You can just do that with Adigy Live Desktop. So it's an awesome feature. I highly recommend it if you guys haven't tried it yet.
Now there's two things that you need to do, and I learned this from you, Joe, because you told me about this offline, is, of course, the user needs to download and install and approve the MDM profile, right? Mm-hmm. And then you have to enable ARD in system preferences.
When you turn on Live Desktop, it can actually enable access for you, but you still have to approve the screen observe and control, basically.
Right,
so,
observe and control, yeah. Now,
just
this changes a little bit with Big Sur as well, right? Because, and maybe Sam could speak a little bit more to this, with the MDM profile and installing that on Big Sur, doesn't that need to be done?
On the Big Sur side, at least with MDM, I mean, the biggest issue is that standard users can't approve screen sharing. Like if you wanted to screen share and they're a non-admin account, they can't approve it. So you can, from MDM, you can send down a configuration profile to allow non-admin users to allow screen sharing. As far as I understand it, that's an MDM only setting that you can do. So it might bite some people in the future if they're not aware of it.
The other thing to know about this is, let's say you get connected and you're managing the migration remotely. I mean, you're literally looking at the screen. Obviously, you can see the status of the migration and so on. As part of the process of starting the migration, obviously, you have the option to say, would you like to replace the user account on this computer or keep both, right? So if you've connected using Live Desktop, using like whatever temp user account you made, like let's say you created a user called temp, password, command control power, that's how you're connected. So you probably don't want to remove that temp user as part of the migration process because you'll be essentially disconnected at the end of that. Just one little side note to just keep that temp user, and this way you can stay connected till the end and just remove it manually after the fact. But I can tell you this was really, really helpful. I'll give you one specific example. This is another migration tip. In the past, I've talked about this kind of vaguely on the show because I wasn't sure how much attention I wanted to bring to this, but I was concerned that backing up using Time Machine to a Synology would get stuck on the starting up phase. So you'd go through the normal process that I described, where you'd create a temp user on the system and get it all up to date. And then you want to go into Migration Assistant in the Utilities folder to migrate from a Time Machine backup. In this case, the Time Machine backup would be on a Synology. It would be set up, say, like using their standard process for backing up to a Synology using Time Machine. Obviously connected over the network. We had tested this with wired connections. We have a lot of these 2-bay units, the very cheap ones out there for like residential users, usually mirrored. So in case one drive fails, we just, can replace it without disrupting their backups and things. So we'd pretty much standardized our setup there, and we had deployed a bunch of them. And then we started to find that we had trouble restoring from backup. So, no big deal, just the only job it's supposed to do. So we had one in an office that was I forget if it's like a 4-bay or like one of the bigger ones, a rack-mounted one with, this one wasn't rack-mounted, but it was like a really, higher end one with a memory upgrade. It's the file server for the office also doing backups. So we tried restoring from that, and we had the same thing. And then we tried, there were a few different ones, like a test setup that we configured. So not just the super low end ones, but also some decent hardware. And we had the same exact problem multiple times. We did have some successful restores, which is why we didn't catch this at first. But we did find that, too often it would get stuck. And the symptom was, you'd get all the migration queued up, you'd get through the step where you're selecting the data. Let's say you leave it all selected, you let it calculate, it's preparing, to like determine how much stuff needs to be migrated. We usually let it go through all that stuff until it's stable, until it has finished a little spinning gears next to each of the items. At the bottom, it'll say something like X amount to transfer, X amount left after migration. And once it gets to that point, then you start migration, right? You continue. So we try to do everything right very carefully, and we'd still, at that stage, get to this screen that says starting up. And it would have this indeterminate progress bar. It would just be like the little Knight Rider kind of progress bar, showing it's supposed to last for like a few seconds. It doesn't show progress actually being made. It just kind of is like a placeholder that things are waiting. So starting up was a symptom, and it would just not proceed. So we saw that on systems that were running Catalina fully patched and also Big Sur fully patched, and maybe even prior macOS versions. I don't know how far back this goes. So again, this was very disconcerting because this would happen and there's just like nothing you can do. You start it over, you reboot both devices, you try to get a nice fresh start. Maybe it was network related, maybe the Synology was bogged down with memory, something like that. We try to just do a totally clean slate and couldn't figure out why this would happen like way too often. We then did one at a client location. We did a remote migration for one computer, and it worked on the first try. And so we were happy, that this was going smoothly. It was a recently installed Synology, new computer the client purchased after we had set up the Synology, and we did a remote migration from the Synology backup. It was working just fine. And that was on Wi-Fi. The new computer is connected over Wi-Fi. So, that was a big leap to even try that, but it actually did work. So we had some hope there. Then we got to the next new computer. So same household, same Synology that had just worked a couple weeks prior. And we did everything the same with the new computer, and it didn't work. It got stuck on that starting up kind of phase. This is exactly what we're concerned about. So in this case, I had another idea, and this is what solved it. So this is a tip in case you get stuck trying to restore from a time machine backup to a Synology. What I did differently was, before I opened Migration Assistant, I'm in the Finder. I connected to the Synology over the network in the Finder, and then I mounted the backup disk in question. It was weird because I actually got a message from the Finder that said, the disk image is damaged. Are you sure you want to mount it? So have you guys seen that one before?
Yeah.
It's like, oh boy. I don't know if that was because we had just made some attempts in Migration Assistant to restore, like using Migration Assistant, and it was like mounted and then, I don't know, unmounted or locked or something. Or if it was because a backup was in progress before we started this, or I don't exactly know what that message was, but I was like, yeah, I'm sure I want to mount it. So I proceeded. It mounted, no problem. It was quick. So then I see, time machine backups, and I go in there and I see this user's backup. So no problem. So then I open Migration Assistant. It showed the backup server like it did before, the Synology, which I could still connect to. And it also showed separately the already mounted backup. It was like Jane's iMac or whatever it was. So I selected her backup and then just proceeded normally, and it worked. And that was also on Wi-Fi. So Wi-Fi was actually great in this case, but that was the workaround in case you get stuck with that starting up screen.
Wow, that's a great tip. So that's all it was just mounting the time machine drive before you started the migration.
I hope that's all it was, because we haven't had too many other occasions to test this theory. I had tried several attempts using the normal process before taking this step, and nothing worked until I tried this step. And it was great to have the live desktop connection, thanks to Adigy, to be able to start the migration, see if it was going to work. Then it's stalled out on starting up. Now it's like 10 p.m. Eastern time. I wouldn't have called the client back to like try again at that point. So just the fact that I had the Adigy live desktop and I was able to make several different attempts and actually get this working, thanks to being able to stay connected remotely while the Migration Assistant was running was a huge improvement. So hopefully that works for someone else. I'd be very curious if anyone has seen that issue and if this helps you with it.
Well, that's certainly great, Joe. Just the fact of restoring over a network, I know for me sometimes can give me chills and a little bit of concern, especially when you're doing it remotely, and it was over Wi-Fi. But you found a trick, or a solution, we should say, and you didn't have to reach out to a client at 10 o'clock at night. So kudos to you. You have clients that are sometimes good to work with and sometimes just never learn their lessons. So I was thinking about this as we were talking tonight. I have a client that I've talked about many times on the show that has never learned their lesson once about anything I try and tell them. And the problem is, I would probably drop this client if they didn't represent such a large income for us. It begs the question, like, what do we do in those situations where they come to a point where they're not doing things that are security minded that you suggest, and if they get themselves into trouble, it looks poor on you, not to mention it could start a whole potential legal thing if you don't protect yourself. So I'm getting at this because I had this client that has multiple facilities, right? And we got a support ticket early one morning at about 7:15 in the morning. I wake up, I check some tickets to see if anything happened, and I saw that come through. And one of the sites, she said no one could get online. So I go into TeamViewer and I actually see their server. In this case, they have a Windows server there. So I was like, okay, thank goodness, because they're an hour and a half away, and that's a little worrisome if their network goes down. So I get into the server, I can see some local devices. I go into the UniFi controller that's local there, and all the UniFi stuff is down. So we start directing her to try and reboot the switch, that's the main PoE switch, and see if the APs, because they're PoE access points, to see if they come back online. And she tried to describe the switch saying the light would come on, but nothing was happening. And I thought that was odd. And I couldn't figure it out because I obviously couldn't see what was going on. And to top it all off, in the basement of that area, there's no cell range. So I couldn't even FaceTime or do anything like that. The other issue is that getting into that place, you need to have a negative COVID test. So there's a lot of stuff going on here that was making it very tricky to try and even send someone on site to troubleshoot. We have a consultancy, this is out in Long Island, we have a consultancy that's nearby there that we work with, thankfully that we trust. And I called the guy up and I said, listen, they're right down the road from you. Can you stop by? And it turns out the facility can do one of those immediate COVID tests on site. Nice. So he said, okay, I'll do it for you guys, because we know each other well. So he goes in and he's like, the UniFi switch is just dead, just plain dead, no power, nothing, which was weird because she said she saw lights on it, but maybe she didn't. And so that knocks out all of the APs, of course, and anything connected to that main switch. I had told this client before that they're in healthcare. I said, you can't have things like this happen. You have to spend the money for backup hardware, a pre-configured UniFi switch that's sitting there at the ready. I mean, that's the best thing you can do for redundancy. Yes, it's going to cost you some buckets, but what are you going to do otherwise? Now you're down for the day. And the worst part about this is the fact that they know that this can happen. Then they start to ask questions like, why did this happen? Why are we down? And I'm like, guys, I can't even believe you're asking me this because I'm pissed off right now. I mean, Yeah, absolutely. But also, I've told you what to do here. Right. So why are you asking me this question? The long and the short of it is, since it was a UniFi switch, the consultancy that we work with out there, they also are a reseller and they know of a UniFi vendor that's actually on Long Island and local and had one of these 48 ports in stock, a 48 port PoE switch. So the guy drove 45 minutes, picked it up, brought it back, configured it with the backup of the current UniFi controller, got it all up and running, had them up within, I'd say, 5-6 hours. It was a long time because by the time we started troubleshooting, it was already 9 something. I wasn't going there at 7:30 in the morning. And so we saved the day. I mean, we ultimately saved the day. The people that are at the facilities are incredibly thankful and so happy. And the owners are like, why did this happen kind of thing. So I said, listen, hey guys, this is what I told you last time. So if you'd like, I would do this in a really friendly tone, of course. I'm like, if you'd like, I can give you quotes for backup hardware because yet again, this is what we suggest. And I would highly suggest doing this so it doesn't happen again. I get silence. This is what happens every single time I tell them to spend money.
Yep.
But I would imagine it costs them a tremendous amount of money to get this new switch back online.
Right. We're charging them time and a half for 5 hours plus the equipment, which they could have already had on hand if they had spent it. It's ridiculous that they don't see that they just spent a ton more money now had they not set it up the right way from the beginning. I just don't understand them.
Right.
I'm like, guys, here's a huge bill. Take it, pay it, and learn your lesson. And they absolutely do not. I just don't get it.
It's so frustrating.
I mean, it is, but they represent a large sum of income for us. What do you do? I can't say screw you. I mean, I could, but I'll probably have to fire Matt. I don't want to do that. So
right.
What am I going to do in that case? I got to keep pushing them along, and it's really a tough call. So, our contract paperwork does say that, if they don't follow our recommendations, then we're not liable. But I still feel like almost that's not enough. If HIPAA comes at them and slaps them with a fine for something, they're going to come looking at us for sure.
Wow. You could stock a 48 port switch, and I know it's not inexpensive, in box, new in box, and at the time that you sell it for 50%, 75% markup on it.
Then it comes out of my end.
I know we're not in
the firewall too.
Yeah. I know we're not in that business. I totally get it.
Comparing it like you did, 5 hours, a time and a half, that's a significant chunk right there. I don't know how that would break down, but because you're talking about not just one, the purchase of one switch. Obviously, if it was just a purchase of one switch, 5 hours at time and a half would easily cover, the cost of one switch. That'd be a no-brainer, easy to kind of compare that. But really, you would probably have them buy, like you said, a gateway, a switch, and I don't know, whatever else, like some minimal setup, to replace the core components. That's tricky because I don't know how much that would ultimately cost. Maybe they just prefer to say, like, rather than spending, $5,000 right now and just knowing that we have downtime minimized and, the cost minimized if that should happen, I'd rather just take my chances and, we'll see what happens. And it's not going to stop them from asking the questions when it does happen, and kind of putting some of the burden on you when it does happen. But effectively, that's the decision they're making by not buying more hardware. It's frustrating. I don't necessarily blame them. Like, if I were trying to make this decision for my own self, I'd be thinking, okay, if I have to buy a full set of hardware now and I might never use it, and then in 5 years I have to buy a new network times 2 again, or 7 years, I don't know how many years, they might just be opting out of that and saying, I'll just spend less money up front and I'll just budget. I mean, not that they're actually doing that, but I'll just budget for like the worst case scenario when that does happen. So, I mean, it'd be nice to just say that to you though. And like,
the problem with that is though, because of the type of business that they're in, they have like medical distribution at certain times of day, and that relies on their EMR system, which connects to the internet. Mm-hmm. And so if they are down for an extended period of time, technically speaking, that's a violation. Wow. So not only would they lose money spending it, but if they had a HIPAA violation as a point of that could be tens of thousands of dollars as a fine. So it's like they're just not planning. They're just hoping that nothing ever happens, that they're ever caught for that sort of a situation. But had we missed medical distribution times, then that could have led to something bigger and who knows, catastrophic or something, So I think they're just playing it really too much to the wind. They're just saying, screw it. With a situation in a business that they shouldn't. Like, I can see that. What you're saying, Joe, I can totally get. If it's like, hey, I got an office of 25 people and I don't want to spend $1,500 on another sonic wall because those things are pricey. Right. I get that. But with their business, I don't think they're even allowed to really do that because of that kind of a situation. Anyway, it just pisses me off, too.
I totally get angry. It. Yeah, and I think it's in your example of like if it's just a normal company that's considering, do I want to spend this much money on like a sonic wall? The analysis there, like that a lot of our colleagues would probably go through a lot better than I could, would demonstrate the actual cost to that. Because I'm saying, just play, see what happens. If it happens, they pay time and a half and it gets solved and they're taking their chances. But it's not just your time and it's not just the new hardware. It's also like the lost productivity. If you lose a day of processing sales or whatever it was you were going to do, that has a cost. If all your employees are sitting there collecting a paycheck for not doing any work because you're down, that has a cost. So that's the true comparison. And then for your client, it's like all of that plus the fact that they could be fined, they probably should be fined. That would make it a no-brainer. And then they're just not budgeting properly if they're not, if they're not doing that and taking your advice.
Maybe I'll have one of you guys rat them out next time it happens.
It could be cash flow because their risk tolerance is so high that they figure it's just a cash flow issue. They need to patch where they need to patch. The other thing you could tell them, Sam, if you really push a little bit harder, is you could tell them about the supply chain. And so these things that were immediately available at B&H or whoever your supplier might be at any given time, you can't get these things a lot of times. You need a unified gateway. A lot of times B&H doesn't have them. And the other problem is you want to buy from an authorized reseller for Unify Ubiquity equipment because you get it from Amazon, it's not warranted. If it breaks 90 days later, you're out.
Can you slow down a little bit? I'm trying to take notes here. So B&H, you said? How's that spelled?
Nice. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of lucky that they even had a vendor there on Long Island. I mean, that's, it could have been like, hey, we'll get one, it'll be here tomorrow if you're lucky. Then you're talking multiple days of down. That's, yeah.
The funny thing about this, guys, is I've had this actually a similar thing happen to another site, and I've complained about this on the show maybe a couple years ago, a similar thing. And an entire wing of one of their places was down for a long time because what happened was, I won't tell the whole story again, but we had quoted out the replacement switch that we had to pre-configure, and they found it online somewhere and bought it themselves and had it sent there. And we were like, what are we supposed to do with this thing? Like, we had a switch at the ready that we were going to pre-configure and connect, because it was a complicated switch with a whole bunch of VLANs, and you went on like freaking the equivalent of Amazon and just bought one. Like, that's not how this works. So I was so angry that time too, and it's bringing back all these old memories. But I'm sure I'll have another story in another 6 months about them. Just
on the heels of Unify, I have a client, and I've mentioned him on previous shows, pays her bills, but loves to play with the new Unify gateway and the new portal and the controller. And I keep on sending emails saying, look, if it goes sideways, you have to pay us to fix it, but have at it. So one of the things that was annoying to him, and actually annoying to me, was in the alerts, we were not getting the correct date and time. The alerts were coming in the middle of the night, when people were connecting and disconnecting, and we knew that wasn't the case, so the time was off. So there's these different ways in the Unified Network Controller that you can set the time. There's two specific places you set the time to get it from the time server. And in both cases, it was still not recording the same time events accurately. What the fix was SSHing into the Unify gateway and setting the time to update to the UBNT, pool ntp.org server by setting the date that way. So even if you set it correctly in the controller, when I SSH'd into the Unify gateway, the date was off, even though it was set correctly in the controller. So if you ever have a problem with those dates being just completely out of whack, that's the way to fix it.
Pro tip.
Yeah, nice tip.
All right, guys, here's a thing where I'm not sure it falls under the category of I should know this, but I'm going to throw this out to you both. Client working with them remote, they tell me that they can't type anymore on their keyboard, that the letters are not working on the right-hand side of the keyboard. That may be a clue, it may not. Well, that's so weird, So I had this client boot off to the recovery partition. Successfully, we were able to do that. Run the repair with the mouse. Drive was fine. The mouse was working, but the keyboard just would not work. And I had her go out to Staples rather than me come on site, get another keyboard, a generic USB keyboard. That didn't work. Do all the, NVRAM, PRAM, all that stuff. PMU, FDR.
I was waiting for one of those.
Yeah.
Whatever it takes. I couldn't figure this thing out. And she's just like, she's at her wit's end. And I said, I don't know. I said, I know it's not the hard drive. We, put a Samsung SSD drive in there about 2 years ago. And the computer, has been running fine for her. So I'm like, I don't know. I have to see it. I have to work with it. Got the machine in. Within 3 minutes, the problem was fixed. What was it?
Can I try a stab at this?
Yeah.
Did it have anything to do with accessibility?
Yeah, that's what I was saying too.
Mouse keys or anything?
Yep.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, I gave you that tip through text, didn't I?
Command Option.
That's why it took them 3 minutes,
You
Joe.
might have said accessibility, but I didn't know with Command Option F5 you could toggle mouse keys on and off. That
or
doesn't
press
happen.
Option 5 times if that's enabled.
Yeah.
But I think I've been there before and I probably blocked it out, but still had that one little breadcrumb to go back to accessibility, because I poked around in accessibility after you described that to me, and that's what I thought too. So did you confirm it was mouse key, or did you have to rip the whole thing out?
Well, here's the thing. I know I fixed it in a couple of minutes. So I'm not sure if she was on Big Sur or Catalina, but if you press Command Option F5, you get a pop-up window that gives you vision and physical and motor. Command Option F5 makes it go away again, and you could check off certain things like voiceover, sticky keys, zoom, mouse keys, and that was ticked off. Have you ever seen
that right away? Huh?
Yeah. Have you ever seen that window pop up?
I think I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, I just saw it pop up because I tried what you just said. Is that the same keyboard shortcut that they read off to you when you're setting up a new Mac or something?
Yeah, I think it might be actually.
Well, as soon as I booted up her computer, you get a quick flash where it says mouse keys enabled, and I'm like,
there you go.
Yeah. And we had restarted her Mac over and over and over again, and she never related that to me on the phone.
Oh, man.
Oh, that's frustrating.
I know. it's so funny what they think to tell you and what they don't tell you. Like, I'll give somebody the exact thing to click. I'll say, click this button that says this exact thing. And then they're like, okay, I see that. I also see like this. I'm like, no, just click the
Right.
first one that I said
Stop
that you already
reading.
identified, But then something like this comes up and they don't think to tell you, like mouse keys enabled, like that seems like a weird statement, when you first turn on your Mac. Like, I don't know.
That would have been the tell right there, right? I mean, plain as day, it flashed on your screen. It was just very, very frustrating. So, I didn't really charge her very much. Sometimes you get these houses.
Yeah, and you got to charge them more. Come on. Like, this was really annoying, and you should charge because it's annoying. and it's not your fault that they like had this weird feature enabled. They're lucky that they found you to figure it out and solve it.
Yeah, that's why you're buying the fancy phones, Joe. We're in the middle of a pandemic. This is a family that I followed them through a really nice house, and they downsized to something which is a far cry from what they were living in before. And you want me to squeeze that lemon even harder. Shame on you.
Well, you charge for the time you spend, and obviously I give my clients tons of concessions, even though I'm harping on the fact that we should all be charging more. But I'm not saying gouge anybody, but like, it's just, it takes as long as it takes to charge it to fix it. And I don't know. I mean, it's always a tough call. I get it. You don't want to,
Joe, I hope you find honest work one day.
It's good. It's so good.
Jerry does his voices of customers of all kinds.
Am I on the cloud?
Joe spins his deeply detailed yarns all the time.
I have a whole story about this.
Sam is on the road again, phoning in from a hotel.
At least we know where I am.
Half a century combined of Apple expertise right now. My Mac is slow. Have you tried restarting? Well, the fans won't blow. Have you tried restarting? But my data is gone. Have you tried restarting? I dropped it in the pond. Have you tried restarting? Well, my coffee is cold. Have you tried restarting? Well, I'm getting old. Have you tried restarting? I fell off a horse. Have you tried restarting? I'm getting a divorce. Have you tried restarting? Command, control.
What's happening was I noticed that there were some programs that the client wanted to have on, but I have a decent migration story. Wait a minute, I got a text from Joe. Hold on.
You're not supposed to read those
I have
live.
a decent migration tip after this.
You threw him off.
I'm
Okay.
just saying I could go. I'm raising my hand, but continue, Jerry.
Yeah.
Okay. So they want to have
No, no.
certain applications
No.
in the
You should
trash.
know by now. He doesn't like getting the text in the middle of the story. Come on, Joe.
I'm very old and slow. Okay.
Sounds like a 2013 iMac, actually.
Right. No, this is
Series
all
of 2012.
good jokes, but they're all being cut. So it looked like I was good.